Hey folks, your
Absolute Packer podcast initiating in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Recording, you can start whenever you want.
Hello out there in Packer Nation, and welcome to the APP podcast number
20,
5.
which we have titled, I Can't Help You With That, as an homage to our friend Winston Moss that we can talk about here in just a minute. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and check in on my other podcast cohorts, Elliot Christensen and Jeremy Hautala. What's up, guys?
Yeah, buddy.
Hey, you know what? We're not on track to hit 1,000 miles on the bike. So,
Right.
I think nobody expects your level of energy out of me, especially. But Jeremy, I don't even know if he can get to that level.
Well, I must say I was pleasantly surprised to hear that the actual halfway point of the year is July 1st and not today, which is interesting. But that gives me, a little over a week to try and get to, or actually, what am I saying? 2 weeks to get to 1,000 because I'm at 840. But like I said, you got to have goals, man. If you don't have goals, then you're just kind of floating around.
Well,
I tend to do better
There's
with them.
365 days in the year, so I'm not sure if it's on the first at noon or on the second at noon that you have to hit your halfway point. So
Yeah, and if I don't hit it, on that exact moment, at the halfway point of the minute of the day, I turn into a goddamn pumpkin.
You're the ones spouting off about having goals. I don't know if you got goals and you're not going to hit them. Why have the goals?
I know this is true. This is true. Well, it's funny when I started off the year, I was like, I want to do 1,000, and then I was like, I'm going to blast through that. So
cool.
I'm glad I at least did that because I don't even know where the heck I'd be because I'd be like, oh, I'm at 1,000. And then I just end up doing like a mile a week or something like that. Yeah. So kind of glad I upped it, but feeling good.
Inspiring. I don't know that I'm going to bust out 1,000 miles anytime soon, but I might actually bust out my bike and put it on 2 miles.
I hear you. So why don't we pop into first topic here, which is first round of OTAs and mini camps. And actually, speaking of cycling, I went to the first OTA. Actually, it was the second OTA practice. I'm sorry, but I went to it in person. As everybody knows, we reside in Green Bay. So, and I took my bike. I never actually biked out there, so I got a good route coming from my house. I'm on the east side, and went out there. And I did a Facebook Live just outside because they're real sticklers. You can't have any video. I didn't want to get caught up in all that stuff. So got a few pictures, but I made a note here that it goes without saying every single year, but you have to still kind of beat it like a dead horse. It's a bunch of athletes running around in shorts. It is, if you're looking at trying to objectively quantify or just see how the rookies and younger players are going to do in an organized team activity type setting, you just can't because, like I said, they're playing patty cake in shorts. They're not even engaging in real blocks and all that. So, guys, I would say certain guys look the part. I made a note here that Jimmy Graham, the free agent tight end that came over from Seattle in the offseason, he looks the part. He looks like a real tight end, and Mercedes Lewis, who I assume is going to be more of a blocking tight end, allow him to do some 2 tight end sets potentially too. Maybe those guys together, I got probably about 20 feet away from those guys, and they were catching some passes. They looked the part. They did not look like Richard Rodgers and who else have they had over a tight end, Brandon Bostic or whatever. They look the part. So that's good to see. And it was odd too, because they're both, free agents. They weren't draft picks, they're free agent veterans. So that was good to see. But again, outside of that, I'm watching Rodgers, throw passes with nobody in his face. And then they run the red zone drill and it's like, no comment, It was good that there's football, but other than that, that's all I got. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, it's the only time that you saw Aaron because he didn't, McCarthy excused 16 veterans from the last round of OTAs here. So
that's right. That was the third practice, I guess. So I saw the middle one, and I don't know how you guys feel, but it was Michael Cohen, who's a beat reporter for the Packers News. He made a good point. I listened to him on a sports radio talk show. I think it was a few days ago, and he made the point that McCarthy and a lot of the coaches, they whine constantly about how the CBA is taking away practice. And then he excuses 16 veterans.
Yeah.
I never really thought of it that way,
Yeah.
and I'm going, that makes a lot of sense. If everything's so valuable,
Right.
why are you excusing half the damn team,
Right.
whether they're veterans or not? So,
That's worth a lot.
you know, take that for what it's worth.
I
but
agree.
the other thing, I think so, and I think, and I think, you know, it's not like the Packers sometimes, you know, they're kind of insulated, so it's like they have this thing, and when McCarthy talks about it, specifically, you know, the reduction in practices and all that, and padded practices, they make it sound like they're the only team in the league where it's happened to. No,
Right.
it's the whole damn other league is doing it too. You know, it's the same problems, and they deal with it. So,
Yeah.
you know, take it for what it's worth. But yeah,
Well, my gripe with McCarthy is they always start the year off really slow. You know, I mean, the offense is
Good
just,
point.
I mean, they're just foggy. They're just kind of working their way through the cobwebs. And that really should be the time that you're working through that stuff in the preseason, not the regular season. So letting off these 16 veterans for the OTAs, I know they were, you know, mandatory and they should be there, and he let them go. But I mean, this team notoriously starts the year off so slow. Get them
That's a
there,
good point.
get these guys working out, get them together, and let's get some football going.
You know,
Really.
that's a good point too. Because, and I guess as I heard you say that, I'm going, McCarthy his offense hasn't changed, and he's been here. This is going to be his 13th season with basically the same quarterback, you know, for 2/3 of, you know, 3/4 of that time, and Aaron Rodgers. So why is they start off so slow? And, you know, we got a regime change here. We got Brian Gutekunst instead of Ted Thompson, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So my only thought to that, to your point, can be that they're constantly churning in younger players. So they have to, you know, and undrafted, you know, rookie free agents and whatnot. So it's harder to get them up to speed year over year. You know, maybe that will change when you got more veterans and more savvy, you know, vets out there. But yeah, that's true. I mean, and McCarthy's scheme, for everything I'm seeing, you know, and hearing, and I'm no scheme guru, you know, I have some limited knowledge, but it's not that it's predicated so much on beating your man. There's not all these crazy concepts, you know. There's nuance to it, no doubt, but
Right. McCarthy bases is
somebody fell down a well.
You know what? I hate this feeling, but I feel like, why did they do that?
Yeah.
Why did he let him out of practice? And, you know, it's not like we're Super Bowl champions. You know, we got some things to prove this year. Let's get going and start that first game off with a win.
right.
The other thing I think that's important to know is, you know, McCarthy has put a lot of pressure on himself. You made a comment the other day. I don't have it in here, but I think it's what the Press Gazette got it. Or, I mean, it's just, you know, public record, obviously. But he said, you know, this has been the best offseason that he's had since he's been here. Well, that's because he got it what he wanted. Everything that he wanted, he got. So he's putting pressure on himself. And I firmly believe that if he doesn't make it past the divisional, if he doesn't make the NFC Championship game and the team stays relatively healthy, he's gone.
Are you putting money down on that?
No, I don't bet. Never gambled. Never put a coin in a slot machine. But I will say it.
No, he won't be gone. He won't be gone this year. Well, I mean, next year, you know, whatever. He's not going to be gone.
Well, I mean, no, not this year.
I still think he should have gone out when Ted gone, but we can get into that, you know, a little bit more too. But
Well, should and prognosticating are two different things.
yeah, that's true. I'll give you that. So, any other comments with regards to that stuff?
No, I never put much stock in those things. I liked some of your. I didn't hear if you got in some of your other comments there, but I don't get too excited about anything really, this practice stuff, because you can't tell.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you want to. That's part of the thing. It's like you have to temper your enthusiasm. Like when you go to an OTA practice or any kind of practice on Nitschke Field, even if it's Nitschke Field, you're like, cool, okay, you're actually there. You're even closer than you are to game. So it seems a little bit more intimate, and football's coming around, but you're not going to see anything. So you do have to remind yourself that this is just it's basically a dog and pony show. So temper your expectations. One thing I this was kind of towards the end, but I did get a chance to see the three rookie wide receivers. Now, were they catching a bunch of passes? They were playing their little patty cake to stink and dunk, but they passed the eye test. They got size, and some of these guys look pretty quick too, even if they're not, running at full speed. I think is it St. Brown? Is that Equanimous St. Brown? I believe that's his name. He's a big dude. He's big, and this is going to be the biggest, strongest, fastest wide receiving core Aaron Rodgers has had since he's been here. Now there's a lot of rookies in there, but it's definitely going to be, size and speed are definitely there.
So let's light it up. Let's get these guys practicing. Let's get it going.
That the other thing you got to, but the other thing you got to temper your enthusiasm is who was the last rookie wide receiver the Packers have had who's made any discernible impact on the season?
No question. So the whole thing about the regime change, we have to throw out the previous expected wisdom, I guess. Yeah,
you almost have to have different. That's a good point. I mean, different expectations for everything. Maybe McCarthy's got to be feeling some heat, so maybe he's going to force the issue some more, which, that's definitely true. But still, I hearken. There's a good word. I hearken back to. I heard that word the other day, so I wanted to use it. There you go. Greg Jennings. I think I mentioned this to you guys that he was. I remember watching him. I remember watching Greg Jennings his rookie year. I went to a minicamp practice, and he was the last rookie wide receiver that I saw over the past, I would say, 15 years that he looked NFL. I mean, he was awesome, and he had minuscule stats his first year. He had like 350 yards and like 2 touchdowns. So let's calm the hell down. But that was still during the Ted regime, and Mike, and Aaron was young, so. That's a good point that things could change, but they got size and speed. I mean, they passed the eye test. St. Brown's a big dude.
Well, and let's be honest about something too. I think this year they're going to rely on these rookies more so than any other year, obviously, because they don't have anybody else besides, veteran wise.
It's true. There's not enough bodies.
No. So these rookies are going to be dependent upon to actually do something this year, and they're going to be given the chance to. So, and that's going to be exciting to see. I think we've been so used to seeing Nelson run these routes and Cobb and all that, and this year we're going to see. I think we're going to see quite a few guys out there and getting the opportunity to do something, and that's exciting that we're seeing opportunities created. New blood.
That's a good point. You almost have to look at the whole damn thing. The whole package.
Right.
Coaching scheme, the whole deal. And it's, it could be different.
I wish I remember where I read this, but there was an article somewhere about Pete Carroll was talking about how he's looking forward to this year more than others. Of course, coaches always say that kind of thing, but he made a good point that, when you have an all-star core, it's hard to make anyone believe that it's next man up and that their jobs are always on the line, right? Having some fresh blood in there, I think that can really stir things up and make the guys, the more veteran players, I think they can step it up a little bit. I mean, that's my hope, right? It's the off season, rose-colored glasses.
Good point. Yeah, no doubt. No, that's a good point. And I think I made in some messaging back and forth that you guys have made a comment to when Jeremy and I were going on one of our patented venting sprees there the other day that, under Ted, if you're a draft pick, you didn't have to fear for your job because the guy who was going to come behind you was an undrafted free agent who at best was going to be a fringe NFL player. So you had young guys who hadn't proven anything who were basically handed jobs. That's going to change, And I hate to always go back to the Patriots, but the Patriots are churning that bottom third of the roster, and they're bringing in veterans to push veterans, and there's a reason for that, So let's hope that we see some more of that.
Competition always does the team good.
Yeah, and it even goes up to the coach. He's got lights a fire under his ass. I mean, for all we know, maybe there's a healthy something going on with Pettine and McCarthy. I mean, if Pettine does lights out, with the defense, but McCarthy it doesn't go very well with the offense or whatever, and something happens, is Pettine the guy to come in after him? I mean, I'm going way out there, down the road, but hell, I mean, Pettine has been a head coach.
Yeah, too early to tell.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, where McCarthy has never hired an assistant where he's hired an assistant who could ever overtake him under any circumstance.
Right.
So I read that in Sports Illustrated. So I put the link in the notes. So
okay, cool. Okay, other odds and ends. Mike Pettine. He's a bit more fiery and demonstrative than Dom Capers. And in other news, water is wet. I mean,
yeah.
Dom Capers. he was like a zombie out there, you know. And I keep piling on him. Look, he had his time. It's patently obvious the game passed him by, right? He was fantastic in the 90s, and even in the early 2000s, he was great. But it had clearly passed him by. And, you know, these coordinators that sit up in the booth, you know, during the game, I think that's going the way of the dodo. You know, Pettine's going to be on the sideline. He's going to be kicking ass.
Good point. Good point.
That's just refreshing to see. When I went out there, I was actually looking around, and I was like, for a split second, when I was at OTAs, I'm looking around, I'm like, oh shit, where's Capers? I'm like, oh yeah, he's not here. You know?
Yeah, just the energy. I think, you know, if nothing else, just the energy. I think that is a good thing.
Yep.
And whatever, you can see plenty down on the field. He doesn't need to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's all done and gone, which is good. So, you know, a little side note, it's not in here right now, but I really am fascinated by the comments that you're hearing from Pettine specific to getting pressure on the quarterback, you know, up the middle, meaning the defensive line and not the outside linebackers. What I'm getting at is I just don't know how much of that is real or how much of that is him looking at what's that outside linebacker going, it ain't going to come from there. You know, it's going to have to come up the middle. So what do you think about that, Jeremy?
I agree there. But I mean, if I look at his track record, wherever he's been with the Jets and the Buffalo and Cleveland, they've always had a pretty good defensive line. They really haven't had that, you know, dynamic Von Miller type outside linebacker. So, you know, I don't know what to take of it. I take his track record and say that he's always, you know, put more pressure, or he's put more onus on the defensive line to get to the quarterback. So I think he's just going with his philosophy and the strength of the team, obviously. Right. right. So,
which when they actually mesh, that helps, right? Yeah, I hear you. You know, and I wonder, I mean, this is, again, I don't want to go way down the rabbit hole, but look, let's be honest. The league is cyclical and there's trends everywhere. If you can get out in front of a trend, you know, you're onto something, right? So if there's some kind of there's a lot of hybrid defenses out there. Does anybody play a 3-4 with a ton of base? No. You know, I mean, nickel is basically the base now, as they say. So if you can get out, and if there's some kind of shift away where you have this hybrid 3-4 or whatever, and you put it on its head, and maybe, and I'm not going to sit here and say the outside linebackers are going to cover half the time, but if you do get out in front of that, and, you know, you're making opposing offenses, you know, really have to think, that'd be great. Because when was the last time the Packers have been out in front of a trend on anything? Really haven't.
Right. And to the defense of the way that the NFL is trending now, I mean, the quarterbacks nowadays are more mobile. They get outside the pocket. So the reason why they want pressure from the inside is they want to keep those guys in the pocket. They're playing not to their strength, which back in the 80s and 90s, you had the Lawrence Taylors of the world that, you know, would always come from the outside and kick the crap out of whoever the quarterback was. That time has come and gone. The quarterbacks now are running around. They're getting out of the pocket, and to get the pressure up the middle, that's the kind of the way that the game has evolved, you know, is keep the quarterback in the pocket because they're just not as good in the pocket as they are outside.
Yeah, just look at Aaron Rodgers. My goodness, he is the I was watching, you know, because I'm a geek. I was watching a highlight reel the other day. I was watching YouTube, and it said, you might like this. And I'm like, oh, you're right, YouTube. I would like this. And it was Aaron Rodgers. It was like just pocket stuff. That guy is a damn maestro. They had different angles, and the way his footwork is avoiding the rush. And I'm talking, this is just dancing around before he even makes a throw out of there, just avoiding pressure. Holy cow. I mean, I had never really appreciated that much, like and just like there's no wasted movements, never off balance. It was incredible. I'll have to send it to you guys.
Well, we've had some great quarterbacks, obviously, and Favre. I remember back in the day, Favre could actually sense a pass rusher coming at him, and he would just wiggle out of it like it was nothing, you know.
Yeah, Favre was fun to watch. He was more, you know, kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say just like made it up or whatever, but you're right. He kind of had that innate sense. If you watch, but he knew what he was doing. He had footwork and all that.
But like you said, though, I mean, Rodgers is more smooth with his movement.
Oh my God. There was one, I don't know if you remember this a few years ago, but it was playing Chicago at home, and he avoided probably 8 different guys in like 5.5 seconds, right? nose tackle, defensive end, outside line. I mean, it was just insane. And then he got hit while he threw, and it ended up being a holding call, but he threw a touchdown to Devontae Adams. I don't know if you remember. I'll have to send this to you. It was the most unbelievable sequence of events, and it got pulled away by a holding penalty. It was just unbelievable. I remember.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, anywho,
Yep.
So yeah, I welcome Mike Pettin, also known as a doppelganger for Jesse Ventura from Predator. He's a dead ringer, man. I love it. It's like one of my all-time favorite movies. Okay,
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Oh, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, though. He goes, "You're hit.
All right.
You're bleeding, man. I ain't got time to
There you
bleed."
go. There you go.
And then he wrote a book called "I Ain't Got Time to Bleed."
I was just gonna say that. I read the book. It was good.
Well,
I ain't got time
he's
to
an
bleed.
interesting dude. He
interesting.
talks like this. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I have to tell you, Joe Rogan, when I was governor of Minnesota. Sorry,
That's pretty.
Really?
That's pretty spot on, man.
I know. Jesus, I'm on a roll.
Keep going.
here.
That was good.
Now we're going on to our favorite guy. The guy we either love to hate or whatever. I don't know. But Clinton Dix. How the mighty have fallen over the past year plus. Now he was absent from the first OTAs, and people are like, "What the heck?" And it turns out, I guess there was a death in the family, like his godmother, something passed away. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know all the inner workings of that. But when he came back, he was being interviewed by the local beat writers, and they asked him if he was holding out or whatever, and he made a comment about his contract, and then he winked in the camera, and I'm going, his season last year, let's not sugarcoat it, it was horrific. I mean, it was almost cut-worthy. It was that bad, and more so, the last 8 games, he checked out. It was patently obvious, right? Checked out of the whole damn defense. Now, if I was in a Capers defense like that, I'd want to check out too, but you're a professional athlete. You can't actually do that. I mean, the last 3 games, it was embarrassing what he put on film. So, they picked up his 5th-year option, but, they begrudgingly did that, and he wants another contract. But, right now, Clinton Dix, he's just a guy.
The interesting part of his comments is, I think every interview that he had with Rob Demovsky,
Wildy, I think it might have been.
Yeah, Wildy, I think there was the other one. He mentioned money. That his 5th-year option is it's pretty much just a guaranteed base salary.
He didn't have a workout bonus. Yeah.
No. So, and he said succinctly that if there was a bonus in play, he would have been here. And then he had another comment on ESPN. I think it was probably Rob Demovsky as well, that he talked about Cam Chancellor holding out in 2015, and he was saying that he couldn't compare the two because, obviously he thinks he's better than Cam. But he said, I need the money. I'm not Cam. I can't just hold out because, I have this bank load of money. I need the money. So you have to question where his mind is at. Is it truly for the Green Bay Packers, or is it for HaHa? And I tend to think this offseason really has given him a bad image.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, because I don't know how you guys feel, but professional athletes, particularly football players, get the money while you can get it. I mean, you got short careers, and it could be over in 10 seconds. I completely get that, but the optics and the season you're coming off of, And what's interesting is, I mean, he owned up to it. He put out a tweet, I want to say a few months ago after the season, and he owned up to that. He said he didn't, it's not that it makes everything great, but at least he owned up to that. He knew he put out some bad film. And, as it turns out, he may have been covering from the likes of Demarius Randall and guys who were screwing up and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, look, they were in a Capers defense that was, basically archaic, and it had been, figured out long ago. So I get all that. So I'm kind of like, I see both sides of it, but, it wasn't like he had, a kind of an average season. He had a crummy season. So I don't know, this is a big year for him, no doubt, because obviously if he plays poorly, they're going to let him walk,
And I'll defend him in one way, because I just watched, I think it was on NFL Network. They had the Carolina game. And you know how they show the field, they show the offense, they show the defense, they pretty much show the front 7 or the front 9.
Was this the all 22 or just that?
Just that.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, so he was never in the actual TV screen because he was so far off the ball.
Yeah, they had him playing so damn. And was that? And here's the thing: I imagine that was by design from Capers, but was it? I don't know. You'd have to think, right?
Yeah, you have to wonder, but I tend to think Capers schemed him to play way off the ball and protect the back nine, and
Yeah, and
I kind of attribute that to his bad season. But you are right. I mean, the last 4 games were the effort was not there.
the last game, and again, I mean, their season was completely done, whatever, and both teams were they weren't playing for anything. It was Detroit or whatever. But I don't think I've ever seen a player completely mail it in as bad as he did in that game.
Right.
I mean, it was ugly. But you talk about accountability, and the head coach. How much accountability did McCarthy have? I've said this. I don't want to hit it to death, but he hung on to Capers too long. Everybody knows it. McCarthy knows it. And maybe they hung on to Demarius Randall too long. But again, new regime, all that. So I think me particularly need to kind of look at this with more of an open mind across the board, because you got a new scheme, new D coordinator. There's actually some life injected into this team at certain times where you're just like, oh, here we go, So, but yeah, he's kind of an enigma right now, I mean, who else you got? It's him and Josh Jones are the safeties, right?
And Kentrell Bryce and Marwin Evans and another undrafted free agent. What's his name? Jermaine Whitehead.
They're pumping up all these undrafted free. I mean, they do it. We talked about that ad nauseum too, where it's like the only undrafted not rookie, but just undrafted free agents, period, that have panned out to anything were Tramon Williams and Sam Shields, both cornerbacks.
And don't forget Lane Taylor too.
God, I always missed that. I thought he was a draft pick. I really did. That was a hell of a find then. I'll give him those 3. But, I mean, and again, it's expectations. So 3 out of however many you bring in, and you keep pumping them all up, right? Other teams are bringing these guys in as, their last-minute depth, their special teams guys, and that's it. They don't want them on the field, And that, going back to Lane Taylor, that's a hell of a credit to him because, like I said, I always thought he was like a mid-round pick. So good for him.
So I got to interject to something totally not anything related to what you're saying. Today was 5 years ago to the day that the Donald Driver statue was unveiled at Titletown. I know this because it was my brother's wedding day. So we got a picture of Donald and his family with my brother and his new wife at the time.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyways.
No way.
Nice.
Well, that was my reaction because we were okay. So kind of to our discussion before, we were kind of busting my youngest brother, Brandon, who got married. We were busting his balls about not going to work out with us. And he's like, Friday is my 5-year anniversary, guys. So I'm not going.
It's been 5 years. Holy shit.
But so anyway, so then Facebook said 5 years ago you had this, you shared this picture. And so anyway, I reshared that picture and Donald Driver just hit the like button while we were talking. So
no way.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So that anyway, carry on.
That is nuts.
That's a good story.
No, that's cool. It's all Packers, baby. Winston Moss, here's our next guy. So in honor of this Packer podcast name, Jeremy shared a link on, I believe it was the APP Facebook page, but I saw it because of that actually, where I guess Jason Wilde was asking him a question and asking him why he was being so surly, and he simply answered gruffly, I can't help you with that. So Winston Moss, he's kind of an enigma to me because, as you guys know, he came in when Bob Sanders was a defensive coordinator. Was he the defensive coordinator with Sherman?
Who, Sanders?
And then into McCarthy? Bob Sanders?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So Winston Moss has been around since, 2005, let's say?
Mm-hmm.
And, he's always been a linebacker coach. Now, he's been like assistant coach or whatever these other goofy titles they come up with. But he's basically been linebackers. And he's now into his 3rd defensive coordinator, which
right
in the NFL that chews you up and spits you out. That's very odd that but he's apparently, and again, this is just based on what I read and hear from others and whatnot, but he's highly valued, and some people think he's head coaching material, but I mean, he hasn't even become a coordinator. And I'm trying to, I'll give him credit. He developed Desmond Bishop, one of my all-time favorite Packers of the, we'll call it the Ted era. I love Desmond Bishop. His career got cut short because that hamstring tear or whatever, but he developed him. And, I guess you could say, I think you said AJ Hawk, but AJ Hawk, he didn't live up to his billing. He was solid, but 5th overall pick, so who has he developed at linebacker since last 8 years?
That right there says it all.
Part of it could be, have they drafted linebackers high? Not really. The highest draft pick, I guess, as I look back, and this is, he's inside and outside linebackers. I think it was Kevin Green for a while was outside, but then he took on both. So they haven't really spent a pick higher than 3rd round, Kyler Fackrell. So it's not like Ted has given him a ton of talent, but at the same time, mold something, So again, it's just the fact that he's survived this long and laterally and has never been moved to anything else. And I don't know, it just struck me. But that press conference little video you said was entertaining still, because I like Jason Wilde. He's the one guy left that as much as you can with Packers, local beat writers that still, holds some of these guys' feet to the flame as much as you can. Bob McGinn was the gold standard for that, but he's been, he's gone. He's running his own thing now. But I like Wilty, and he's got enough couth to be able to pull that off, I guess, in seniority. But yes, that was something. So I don't know what you guys think about Moss or how much you know about him, but it's kind of odd. That's all I could say.
Well, I think I told you guys when we were talking in our messaging that back in the day when I was selling cars, I actually sold a vehicle to him. And he was like the most dry individual. And I'm sorry, Winston, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but you were the most dry individual that I've ever met. And it was actually refreshing when you actually left to go to the bathroom. I was sitting there and I was actually trying to catch my breath because I'm like, my God, this guy, there's just nothing to him, and
all business or just very,
very, you couldn't even crack a joke with him. He was just very serious. Okay. And I'm not trying to knock the guy's personality, and I really shouldn't do that. But as a coach, I don't see how you get across to these younger players when you can't even crack a smile.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you do it.
Yeah, and I get to your point. I don't know the guy. I don't know these coaches. I don't want to pretend to crawl into their head. What I think is fascinating, again, I hate to belabor it, but it's in a league that is so chew you up and spit you out. The fact that he survived into his 3rd defensive coordinator, I think is remarkable. And McCarthy's really loyal. We know that. So, again, it's kind of the off season, and it was a funny video. So I guess we'll leave it at that, right? Okay, I call this non-football stuff, but it's basically not on the field stuff, for lack of a better term. So, Brian Gutekunst was surprised he didn't get the ability to hire and fire a head coach. Where this came about, I think you had popped this out there, Jeremy, and this came from Aaron Nagler with Packers News did an interview with him, which was really good. And it is unbelievable, Ted, who you couldn't, send a carrier pigeon to get him out. And, Aaron Nagler basically just had him on a phone interview, and it was really candid. That's great. These kinds of changes are good. But it was, and I guess what I'm saying is when Gutekunst revealed that, I don't really know what that means. It's like, is he kind of complaining or maybe he's just being honest? But apparently, I guess I see it as something that you didn't think he would just let out there publicly in any way, shape, or form. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would like Aaron to kind of clear this up. Was it a question that he asked, or was it just something that just came up out of the blue?
No, he asked it. I don't know if it was exactly directly, but he mentioned it within like a question within a question almost. And Gutekunst he could have said, no comment or blah, blah, blah. But, he did answer and said he was a little bit surprised and, he still gave a diplomatic answer. But, what was interesting is this is the only structure like that in the entire league. Isn't that right?
Correct.
This structure, like I said.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It just seems destined to fail.
Yeah. No accountability.
Destined to fall on itself.
You have to have clear lines of accountability. That's just 101.
If you're Mark Murphy, I don't get how you put this out there and think it's a good idea. And I know that sounds like easy to say and just put it, but I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You hit the nail on the head. It's like you tie the GM's one hand behind his back, because he can't do this, and then they all, is it just power hunger? I don't know. And I guess we'll have to wait to let this play out too. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the smell test, as I like to say. It just doesn't. So if this lasts for like years and years, I'll be stunned.
It's cronyism.
It is. It is. I mean, it's give me, to your point. I mean, give me a business that does something like this.
Well, successful ones don't. You have to have clear accountability.
Yeah. And I mean, is the NFL different? Yeah, no. I mean, but it's still a business, and you have to structure it as such. And
no, if anything, because it's always competitive. You got, 31 competitors out there. Come on, you have to.
Yeah. And the flip side could be Murphy did make the comment that, there was such a lack of communication that maybe he just wanted to go swing the pendulum so far one way and see how it works. And then maybe he'll back off. That's kind of what I'm hoping,
Nah, that's nonsense.
Well, it kind of reminds me of McCarthy's when he tried. Was it who was the
he gave up play calling, and then he gave it to Tom Clements, and it went over like a freaking fart in church.
There you go. And I kind of feel like this is the same thing. Like, things failed, so I'm just going to take the bull by the horns and just run this team.
I mean, that happened after the NFC Championship game. That's when it happened. The Seattle meltdown, because they were accusing McCarthy. You didn't see what was going on in the game, and I'm like, it was basically done to appease who?
There has not been a coach that can either call plays on offense or defense and has a successful team and has a team that is run extremely well since Bill Parcells.
What is, do you know, does Doug Peterson call the plays?
He does. So I guess that throws my theory out, but.
Interesting.
No,
Well, it's the way they're built differently at Pack. And I bring that up only because, they just won the Super Bowl and he's a pretty new coach. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot or anything, but it's interesting. They had a good backup quarterback. That helps. Yeah.
But you brought up a good point. I mean, he did call the plays and they won the Super Bowl. So
everything I've heard, I like Gutekunst. He's basically the anti-Ted Thompson when it comes to, PR and all that, some of the moves he has or has not made, the fact that he hadn't brought in a veteran wide receiver is a little head scratchy. The fact that he didn't bring in, I would say a younger veteran cornerback. I mean, bringing in Tramon Williams is all fine and dandy, but he's 35. He's not 28, So that's a little bit head scratchy, but also he was handed a mess of a roster and kind of a goofy cap, plus Aaron Rodgers extension, which that's segues right in here, I guess. Actually, no, I missed one thing. I don't know how I even glossed over this. Okay.
Well, we could skip it. Whatever.
We'll try. How about we try and touch on it for as little as possible? We have to at least talk about it because I did do a blog on it, but I think we need to discuss it between all of us. And that is the national anthem kneeling policy. When it came out, I was like, what the hell is this? I didn't see this type of thing coming. I figured it was just going to, for lack of a better term, hope that not saying it would, but like the owners and the teams would be like, okay, we don't need to do anything else special, with this particular thing, but I was wrong. And as you guys know, I wrote a blog about it and, you try your best to not get in. Is there a political element attached to this? Of course there is, but you try to look at it from all aspects of it. And, the one thing that I put this in the blog with Roger Goodell is, for being all heavy handed and do this, that, or the other, he keeps biffing on these little layups on these, what seemingly should be, easy PR type things. I mean, I said essentially it was the owners appear to be terrified of Trump, right? Terrified of him. And so it's my opinion, they felt the need to have to kind of appease him in some fashion. How much, that's up to debate. But it didn't need to be done, and the premise also of the blog, as you guys know, was that this whole anthem thing came about after 2009 when basically the U.S. government paid the NFL to have them have the players come out and stand, and basically be there for the national anthem. So it's paid patriotism on some level. There's an agenda there already. This isn't like, from the good of their hearts kind of thing on all sides, right?
Okay, I'm gonna be devil's advocate.
Alrighty.
I don't care one way or the other. I'm all about free speech. If people want to kneel, they want to go back to the locker room, whatever. So I do view this as the inevitable compromise. I feel like this is the only thing that could have been done because it gives a little on both sides. The whole idea that, okay, you can't kneel, but you can sit it out. Like you can go back to the locker room, whatever. Right. I think that's a good compromise. You have to remember that, Green Bay is probably a little bit of an anomaly, that we have so many Packer fans who are not, the stereotypical country music listening, truck driving, whatever, all the stereotypes, but like those are Trump voters, right? So I don't think it's about appeasing Trump. He's just a guy, and people know that he says things that whatever, there's a lot of muscle behind that, but it's the people who voted for him. They feel pretty strongly about some of this stuff. And yeah, it is new, but like some of those things were done to attract these very people that are, they're these gung ho,
Yeah, I think there is it comes down to money. They don't want to, they claim viewership is down and some of that's streaming or whatever. And you got to look out for your viewership. But I mean, let's be honest. They wouldn't have done this policy. They wouldn't have touched it with a 10-foot pole had Trump not kept berating them in public. No way.
I think that was a little piece of it, but I mean, Trump is just saying what these people are thinking. I think he say what you want. Like he does understand a vocal minority, maybe, but an unheard people in the country, right? And
yeah, and he said you did see the quotes that he said that, and it came out in deposition. It was like the Kaepernick collusion case where Jerry Jones said that Trump told him, "You guys can't win on this. This is an issue that's working really well for me." So it is all political on him. He's just hammering it home because he knows, So I don't know. I mean,
I appreciate where some of the players are coming from. Some of they're sticking up for Black Lives Matter, and they're in a position of power, and there's a racial element. I totally appreciate that. They should be willing to take the punishment if that's the deal, right? You don't just get to sit out of things at any job. There's certain things that whether they make sense or not, that's part of the job. You just got to do it. And I don't know why we should treat them differently. They do kind of have a bully pulpit, and they can use it, and maybe there'll be a fine attached to it, and they should be willing to do that if they feel strongly about it. And that just makes that more of a thing. It's not a protest if there's no consequences.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if you'd all to me, and again, this is obviously just personal opinion stuff, and again, we don't need to berate all that stuff. And I think this is a great discussion the way we're framing it up. This is how I wanted it to be done, and this is how it should be done, I believe. Where does it all stem from, though? It all does, like the genesis, if you call it the singularity, where it all started was the players came out because the government paid them to. Before 2009, nobody was even out there on the field for that. So it's this weird double speak, It's this weird, they call it patriotism, and you can't do this, that, or the other, and you can't disrespect the flag. And I'll be sensitive to all sides, but the government paid them.
And that's why I feel like it
and that leaves that gets trumped out of the whole thing. I'm not even talking about Trump. That was before Trump, obviously, So it's like basically the foundation of this whole thing is built on junk, in my opinion, So and again, Jeremy, you've been kind of sitting idly by, and I don't want to, if you got anything to pop in, obviously, please do.
I'll speak on the side of the sports fan, because I know Elliot kind of got more into the political side, but on the sports fan side of it, I really don't want politics to be brought into the sport. I watch the sport to get away from politics, and to bring all this to light now as we stand today. Now we have a president that's, throwing these nasty tweets out there. And then he's, the Eagles decide not to come to the White House celebration. And he's like, I'm going to throw the last zinger in there and say, you let your fans down, and it's like, I'm done with it. I don't want to hear it. I just want you guys to go out there. If you want to stand for the national anthem, please do. If you want to kneel, I mean, I don't see how that hurts anybody. I really don't. And I know there's many veterans that talk about, hey, I fought so that you could actually voice yourself in a peaceful way. Freedom of speech, like Elliot was pointing out before. That's why a lot of our veterans fight. They don't fight because they want you to stand at attention to the flag. They want you to have a voice, and I feel like nowadays everybody's voice is being kind of like slapped and shunned, and you can't do what you want to say. You can't, you have to follow the line, you have to toe the line, and it just bugs me. It really does. So I just want to watch the game. I don't want to have to worry about these protests or the government get involved with it. Just please play the game. That's all I care about.
Yeah. That's a great point you bring there too. And actually I did put something kind of like that in the blog where I said, even though I put out my feelings about why I think it happened and all that, I'm the same way. When I'm a fan, it's like, I'm such a diehard Packers fan. Everything outside of the game and what means to the game and the players and all that kind of stuff is just fluff. It's like, it's stuff, And so I'll talk about it and I'll kind of bring it up and kind of try and, put it through the blender and see what comes out, so to speak. But and in the end, when I'm watching the game, I'm not sitting there going, "Who's going to kneel? Who's going to?" I am like super fan zoned in, and what's happening there. So I definitely get it's almost like the what do you want to call it? You want to it's political invective fatigue with all this stuff, right? Is so I definitely sense that too, and I'm starting to get there too. So, and I think we. In full disclosure, all honesty, I think how we just discussed it, I think was fantastic. So let's pat ourselves on the back and write ourselves checks. Yeah, I don't know. And, it can be done, I guess, is what I'm trying to get out there. And, I talked to some people who said, oh, you shouldn't talk about that, on this and then the other. And I go, nobody really does. And I think that's one thing that can make our podcast and our team that we got here, somewhat different. Are we gonna always get into and get, knockout, drag out, yell at each other? No, but we can't pretend these things aren't there and they don't matter, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, the thing is, like, we're not, I don't know. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I don't feel super afraid of not getting interviews with players and coaches because we haven't had any of those anyway. So
if a tree falls in the wood, no one will hear it. Right.
So,
and no one's around it. Does it make a sound? That's
maybe that'll change due to, necessity at some point. But I think we all have, good, strong opinions and I think, I don't know. I want to pat us on the back too. Move on.
Yeah, no, I think we did good. So, and I appreciate what everybody said, no doubt. So good stuff, guys. All right. Now on to Aaron Rodgers' contract, which is like going on and on and on and on. Part of me, I don't know what you guys think, but he's got 2 years left on his deal. But I almost feel like it's this, like, you got to disarm the bomb before it goes off or something with regards to his contract. Does it have to be done now? The more you kick it down, the more expensive it's going to be. Yeah, but who holds the Packers hold the leverage?
I think basically what you're going to say, they have the leverage. Who knows? He might be hurt next year. He might, he might go downhill faster than everybody thinks.
Yeah. And look, it's I'll call it the DEFCON 5 or whatever situation would be. He plays out his deal and they franchise him 2 years. That ain't going to happen. But I'll tell you what, that is like the absolute worst case scenario. So he's under team control for 4 years, period, end of story. Right. Now, what Rodgers apparently, does he deserve at this moment to be the highest paid player in the league? You bet your ass he does, But does he need to be the highest paid player year over year, which is essentially what it sounds like he's looking for with these opt-out clauses? And again, this is allegedly. Is he actually asking for it? Who knows? But this is what seems to be out there. This is the talking point was, like 1 year deals, kind of like what the NBA is doing, a la LeBron and Kevin Durant, whatnot, where you can just, you opt out, but you stay and you just re-sign for more money to make sure you're keeping up with the Joneses salary wise. and here's the interesting thing with the NFL. The NFL is the only league where you don't get guaranteed contracts, right? You get signing bonuses guaranteed, and basically that's it. But it is the most violent sport with the shortest, career span. So there is this kind of like weird dichotomy going on there. So part of me is kind of like angel devil on the shoulder. It's like, Angel's like, yeah, Rodgers should go get whatever he can get and keep doing this and keep doing that. But then the devil's going, some of it's just selfish. I guess like, I don't want my team to open up Pandora's box in these contract, precedents. Who knows?
You know what? The NFL's big money, and Aaron Rodgers is the best player right now. Whatever, he deserves the most money.
Well, do you think he should get opt-out clauses? If you talk about leverage, if I were the Packers, I'd be like, hell no. I mean, this is, again, my opinion. I would say, we're going to make you the highest paid player. You're going to get a ton of guaranteed money. We are not giving you opt-out clauses. Period, end of story. But we'll give you 120 million guaranteed and make it 35 million per, and add, probably 3 years onto his contract. So it'd be an extension, a 3-year extension totaling 5 or whatever it's going to be, right? I would not give into the opt-out clause, because think about this. He could opt out and leave the damn team if he wants. And you're not going to, you don't want to be a party to your own demise, being the Packers. So I would play hardball on that, but I mean, I get is there more nuance in there? Of course there is, but there's certain levels and thresholds, man,
I don't know. I feel like maybe that's above my pay grade to really talk authoritatively on, but why not? I don't know. I mean, is he?
That's a good question. It's a good question. But I mean, this could turn into like the Brett Favre thing in some weird twisted way where it's like, he could just find a team that's really good, and all they need is a quarterback, a la how Favre did with the Vikings, and just hop in there. And there's no way I'd let that happen. No chance.
Let's just take a look at the evolution of the game itself, and I think it leads up to today, the contention that you have with the players and the teams and the league in its general. Back in the day, you had the Larry Zonkas that were playing with broken legs. They would play the game. The only way that they would not play is if they were dead. And then you come to today, where everything has been evolved into this is a business. And I get that approach. I appreciate that. But now you have the players that are solely looking out for themselves. And I get that. They should. The league has said, we will pay you X amount of dollars. If you play up to that caliber, go get it. But I think the way that the contract situation has devolved is you have these guys that are just asking for the moon and the stars, and these teams are giving it up. And then the next guy in line, and that's where Aaron Rodgers comes into play. Here we sit, 5 years after the fact, where he got a contract that made him the highest paid player. Now he's like middle of the pack, and we're sitting here and we're arguing over, what's going to happen if he doesn't get a contract. If he doesn't get his new contract, is this going to be Favre, part 2? What is this going to evolve into? And this is the problem that this league has developed. It really has.
So is he willing to take less and have opt-out clauses? Like, I don't know enough about that. So, I mean, you got to, if you're negotiating, you got to.
And it's also, if you look at the disparity in salaries in general, quarterbacks are making so much goddamn money relative to the cap is going up, yes, which is good. But the percentage of good quarterbacks is what? It's 15, we'll call it 15% of the cap, one player, and that's the next CBA, in my opinion, has got to address this. I don't know if it will or whatever, but quarterbacks are, and if you bring in a quarterback, you think he's good, but he ends up being bad, you're screwed.
Yeah. But they're the superstars. It's a business. They're the superstars.
Yeah, that's the business side of it, no doubt. And and that's what's weird, because it's a very, very violent sport, like I said, with the shortest career span, but they don't have guaranteed contract. And that's the other thing. Owners never want to do that because of that very reason, right? And I get that. So it is like this weird. I'll tell you what, though, the next CBA negotiation with the Players Association of the league is going to be, get your popcorn. My God, I think it's going to be ugly. I don't think anybody's going to miss games. That's the the only way they'll ever take the players actually seriously. But I think it's going to get nasty.
It would not even shock me if we got to the point where there was actually a strike. Because I think, like you said, I think there's going to be some popcorn eating moments, and I don't think either side is really going to want to back down because they're all backed into a corner. The players are looking out for themselves, and I respect that. The teams are looking out for themselves. I respect that. But oh, wow. This is going to be some popcorn eating moments here. And I think the players might be, we don't know what's going to happen, but could it get to that point where they're just like, well, you know what? Our last option is to sit out and have another strike like they did in the, was it the early 90s? The last strike? Late 80s, excuse me.
I think it was late 80s,
yep.
I want to say.
Do we get to that point again? I don't know. Yeah,
it'd be interesting. I mean, you got to call bluffs, right? And I mean, the money wasn't nearly what it is now. That's part of the thing, obviously. But I think it's going to get nasty. But it is what it is, as they say. So,
I'd love to see, I don't know, a math wizard, somebody with that can throw some math at this and really determine quantitatively how important is a quarterback, how important are the other players, quantitatively. And
actually, I'm glad you asked that. There is some. Well, somebody did do it relative to the quarterback and percentage of the cap. I think it was the Bill Michaels show, and what he basically, it went back to 1990, and the last quarterback to take up more than 13% of the salary cap and win a Super Bowl was Steve Young. And Aaron Rodgers is going to be around 15 or 16% at 35 million. So, I mean, that's not like that, that based on what you said, Elliot, that's like the best thing, but it was a very interesting stat to hear.
So there's like lots of moving pieces to this, right? I kind of feel like some of these contracts, it's sort of like the, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to date myself here, but you remember when they first added heavy metal to the Grammys and Metallica didn't win? And
Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull did. Okay, so you do know about that, yeah. So but then we have to give Metallica in the future some makeup Grammy, right? So are these big contracts of these over sort of over the hill players? Is that I don't know. I mean, it's not. It feels like that a little bit. Are we just paying because they were good in the past?
That's that's an interesting point, and I think that's the thing with free agency. Almost in every sport, in every major sport, is are you paying for past performance or for future progression, right? And look, everybody wants to pay for future progression, but the reality is you're paying for past performance when it all comes down to it, right? I mean, but with that said, there's anomalies, and I think one of the anomalies is Aaron Rodgers. Can he get better? I don't know if he can get better, but I think he's so, I don't want to say far and above beyond, but just the pure talent and acumen and just cerebral, everything about the guy. If you take him and put him next to, I mean, does Tom Brady have more rings? Yeah. But who's a better quarterback? I mean, come on, And Tom Brady's a great quarterback, but Aaron Rodgers, all the tangibles and intangibles, he is the best that's ever been.
I'd like to think so.
He played, what was it? Was it 2016? Yeah, because he got hurt most of last year. But, I mean, he's really showing no signs of dropping off. Has he? And that's the thing with this contract. Has he peaked? Will he fall off the map? Who knows? But he is kind of an anomaly where the guy's just, I mean, he's incredibly special talent-wise. What else can you say? But to your point, I mean, most other guys, you're paying for past performance.
I would not, I don't know. I don't want to be on either side of that negotiating table, man.
And what's an interesting nugget too is, I mean, you look at Rodgers obviously knows what happened with Favre, right? And I'm sure he doesn't want that, but he's made statements publicly that I might not be here for the rest of my career. So he's not dumb, and so part of the weird thing that he saw with the Favre thing was, I don't want this to end like that. But he also looked at Favre and said, shit, Brett Favre was the face of their franchise and they kicked him out, so that, I think after he got older, he kind of figured that out.
That was a different regime that kicked Favre out though, too.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's almost like the player in the prestige within the organization. And, so yeah, But Aaron Rodgers is the king of passive aggressiveness. We definitely know that. Jesus Christ. God.
Yeah, they kicked him out because you were awesome.
Nice.
I don't know. You're pretty good at it too, Andy.
So I'm the Aaron Rodgers of the bunch, huh?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you deserve 15% of the total.
Oh no, because that would leave you guys with way more than me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Jeremy and I both agree that you should be closer to 5 or 6%. But whatever.
Nice. Oh, that's good. So, I mean, when you look at the timing of this contract, where Aaron Rodgers, and I mean, he was injured last year, but he's been injured, pretty banged up, but he became a starter when he was 24. So he wasn't so it's like his body, like how beat up is it really? The injuries he had were, collarbone isn't an ACL, it isn't an MCL, it isn't a, it's not as big a deal as it sounds. I mean, truthfully, his one bad injury was probably his calf. And maybe he had I think in his rookie year, he had a shoulder, something with his shoulder. I don't know if it was his non-throwing shoulder, but other than that, he's held up pretty damn good, So it's just a weird kind of confluence of events that are hitting at the same time. And he's a special player. It's not like we're talking about frickin', Brett Hundley or something here. He's a once in a generation talent.
All right, move on. We're going to talk about this more, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt, as the contract turns. So the last thing I got here, and this is just kind of for shits and grins, but the Detroit Lions, they hired Matt Patricia, and 2 stories I've read about him. Number one, and let me be absolutely clear on this. Apparently there was something where he was either indicted or charged with sexual assault, but he was found not guilty. But the fact that the Detroit Lions didn't know this during the interview process, I think is kind of, a reporter brought it up and the whole team was like, what? So I don't know what their background check was. Now, again, he wasn't convicted, but we all know the era we're in. So it was a bad look for the organization, more so than Patricia, in my opinion, but it was like, it's the Lions. But then number 2 is kind of funny here. So, the first Detroit beat reporter piece that came out from OTA practice was that he's got his guys like running laps, and they basically said in the first paragraph that, well, it looks like Patricia's going to lose the team, because he's making them run when they screw up. I'm like, sounds like things are going swimmingly to Detroit, and it goes back to the Belichick coaching tree, which is rotten to the core and is dying on the inside. I mean, Belichick obviously is a fantastic coach, but man, the people that have give me one guy who's a decent head coach that's left the Belichick tree. I can't name. Can you name one?
I think that is almost something we should have another time, because I think that there's a lot of things we could look at there.
Patricia or Belichick or the whole damn thing?
The big picture, the whole Belichick tree. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It looks bad.
I mean, this is Schadenfreude, with Patricia and the Lions, so.
Yeah, right.
But that's why I had it in here. Any chance we get to dump on other teams that are in the division?
I mean, to me, I'm all about innocent to proven guilty. You weren't proven guilty. You're innocent. So, any bad look, I feel, it's on the organization. But
no doubt.
And I don't know because anybody can be tried for this stuff, right? I mean, you need very little evidence for this, and if you're found innocent. I'm sorry, like that should be it. Like, I don't even like maybe they did know, and it was a non-issue because they knew they couldn't not hire him because of that.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was the Lions and not Patricia, but it was like, well, there's the Lions, same old Lions. Yeah. And I mean, to your point, it's more, let's be honest. It's a different day and age, right, wrong, or indifferent, Well,
it is wrong.
All right.
I have 3 boys, and I'm fearful.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
Dang, they could be. They look at somebody wrong, and they're going to be accused, and accused is worse than a conviction.
Yeah, that is some scary shit. No doubt.
And it diminishes like the actual bad guys, like Bill Cosby. So That's my piece.
Who would have thought we'd end on Bill Cosby?
So I had a thought about I would never want to hire anybody as a pitch man, because like think of him with Jello and then the Subway guy Jared.
God, no kidding, right? Yeah.
So no, we're gonna end on Jared. Go Pack, go!
All right, go Pack, go, baby. I can't help you with that.
Podcast.
I know, right?